Good morning, and I'm really glad to see that there's still some participants on site in the audience. I hope that there are many more watching us online, so welcome to you as well. My name is Heidi Kakko, and I have been developing the startup ecosystem for the last 12 years. And since the last year, I have been helping the European Innovation Council and its fund to design its processes as a member of the Pilot Advisory Board, together with the other 21 members. It has been in a very startup way. The European Innovation Council's pilot has been engaged several successful entrepreneurs, business leaders, researchers, and investors to test and design their value proposition to innovative entrepreneurs. For example, Taavet Hindrikus from TransferWise and Martin Villig from Bolt has also been advising those processes and those institutions. Now we are probably starting one of the most information-heavy sessions of today, but it's all about innovation that drives us and that makes us really keen to learn about, and about funding the innovative founders. The topic will be opened by two presenters from the Directorate General Research and Innovation. This Commission's department is focusing on EU policy to help to grow the startups, to help to grow other type of companies as well, to create the jobs and to tackle the different societal challenges that we face currently. Also, to help the European companies to compete successfully with the US and China. And as the first speaker, I would like to welcome on stage Mrs. Signe Ratso. Signe is a Deputy Director General of the DG Research and Innovation. And prior to that, she has been preparing for the Estonia to join the EU. And probably Signe is one of the top informed Estonians in the European Commission. So welcome, Signe Ratso.
Good morning, Heidi. Many thanks for your kind introduction. It's my great pleasure to be here today at Latitude59. Being an Estonian, I've certainly known about this conference for years. But so far, I haven't had a chance to attend in person. But as the saying goes, one man's loss is another man's gain. And due to the COVID situation in Belgium, unfortunately, my good colleague Stéphane can't be here in person, but you will hear him also, and he will make a presentation on the web. However, due to the same reason, my flight to Brussels was cancelled. So I started to telework from here after my holidays in Estonia. And due to that, I also had an admirable opportunity to participate in this conference. I've been working in the European Commission since 2006, first in the trade area, now for the last 3 years in the Directorate General for Research and Innovation. And I've always been proud of the very vibrant startup community here in Estonia, but also in the Baltic and wider Nordic region. Certainly, one of these reasons why this has actually been really a hub of startup companies is good, favorable environment, business environment and also legal environment. And when working here in the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications, I certainly also worked for making this environment favorable. Now, representing DG Research and Innovation, I'm also glad that over the last years, European Commission, via its Research and Innovation Programme, Horizon 2020, has been able to support startup companies much more than in the past. Stéphane will give a more detailed overview how you, the startup companies, can benefit from our program today and what will be the additional opportunities over the next years. But let me start with a bit wider description of the environment as such. Certainly today we are living in extraordinary circumstances. I also followed the opening panel where Estonian President Kersti Kaljulaid was present. And clearly she put it all in the context of the current crisis due to the epidemic, but also how to get out from this crisis. I can first say that today we are in a much more comfortable situation than before summer, because at the end of July, the European Council, that is the heads of states and governments, reached a historic agreement, namely on the next budget of the EU, which in the EU we refer to as multi-annual financial framework. Why it's unprecedented? First, because the size of the next budget, that is for the next 7 years, from 2021 to 2027, is the biggest ever. But also what is unprecedented, that also the so-called Next Generation EU, a special fund, a special framework for recovery was added, which adds some 750 billion to the MFF with the size of more than 1 billion. This, I'd rather put it away, this is in total 1.8 trillion. Certainly this kind of sums are something which is very difficult to imagine. What I can just provide as a comparison is that it's actually bigger than the... No, I'm afraid this lives its life of its own here. This is bigger than the US Marshall Plan after the Second World War was. Now, where is the place of EU research and innovation funding here? Clearly, research and innovation has been crucial for getting us out from the crisis. So it has really shown that it has provided very agile funding. Because very early on, already at the beginning of March, we started with extraordinary calls in order to find solutions to develop vaccines, to develop therapies and tests against coronavirus. Overall, 128 million funding was provided from Horizon 2020. Also, we launched international cooperation because it's clear that it's not possible for any country or even for the region as the EU alone to get out of the crisis and to find all the vaccines and therapies. So under the auspices of our President Ursula von der Leyen, also the global launch pledge to the Coronavirus Global Response Initiative was launched. And EU funding to that was 1.4 billion, but overall it was more than 8 billion euros. So all these actions have been owing to the innovative soil and entrepreneurial drive of the EU. And what is present already in the current program, but even more so in the new program, is that it's much more company and startup-centric. So let me just say a few words about the main novelties of the program. As said, for the first time, we also support breakthrough innovation from the European Innovation Council. What we also aim to do is to create more impact through the so-called mission-oriented approach, and also via involving citizens much more in developing the program, but also in the implementation of the program. What do we mean by research and innovation missions? These take the really global challenges, those related to climate change, but also health challenges, and try to find solutions. The solutions where certainly research and innovation plays an important role, but not only, also public policies. Just to give an example, the mission boards have developed, for instance, the main objectives for the missions, like setting up 100 climate-neutral cities in Europe by the end of the program, or, for instance, as we know that one of the big challenges in the health area is cancer, to reduce the deaths from cancer by 1/3. Another novelty of the program is that we strengthen international cooperation. During the COVID crisis, we've seen that international cooperation is crucial, as I've already said. But now in the new program, we also extend the possibilities of countries of being associated to our program, which in a way also makes the program bigger, as we have more players and we have more international players. For the time being, countries like Norway and Switzerland, and also the EU's neighboring countries, are associated to our program. Now we open this opportunity up also to the countries who are further away, but to share with us the high level of research and innovation, but also the same values. I know that there are plenty of Japanese participants at this Latitude59 conference. Japan is among those countries who has shown interest in this opportunity, but also countries like Canada, Australia, Singapore, and South Korea. We also reinforce openness. Now, under the crisis, it's also seen that it's very, very important to share both the data, but also to share the results of research. And open science policy clearly helps that. Being here in Estonia, I'd also like to underline the last novelty that you see on the screen, that is spreading excellence, which means the special measures to those countries who have not been too long in the EU and perhaps have not had a chance to be part of the research community. So there are the specific measures also for those countries. Now, getting to the European Innovation Council. Even if European Innovation Council is part of the next program, Horizon Europe, we already started under the current program with a pilot. And the pilot is actually very sizable because it's up to 3 billion euros that we can spend under the current program to support namely breakthrough and disruptive innovation. So European Innovation Council is open to all innovators in any field at any time. And clearly the main purpose is to scale up the companies which have the most potential. We do that via agile funding, and there are two ways. There are Pathfinder grants, which are meant for advanced research on emerging technologies, and then accelerator funding, really for scaling up. We also try to build ecosystems and communities so that the startup companies are not alone, but they can really benefit from being a part of the community. They also have access to mentoring and advisory services and to knowledge partners. Now, since 2019, as said, we've had the pilot running, Now, what are the novelties since 2019 is that, and this is really something unprecedented, which we haven't had before, that under the pilot accelerator, companies can apply also for blended finance, combined grant and equity. And I can say that this option has been very, very popular. We've also introduced Pathfinder with 6 strategic emerging technologies, set up an EIC advisory board, which brings leading innovators and has helped us for really developing the further design of the EIC. And I'm happy that Heidi, who is also a member of the advisory board, is now chairing this session here. And also the first EIC program managers have started working. EIC so far has really shown that it's very, very popular. So far, already more than 1 billion euros have been allocated. And actually, there have been many, many more proposals that we haven't been able to finance due to the scarcity of the resources. Now, what is waiting for you in the next program under Horizon Europe, under the full EIC? The proposed budget is 10 billion. It certainly also will depend on the overall size of the program, which is still to be decided. We are going to have a dedicated governance with the EIC president and advisory board, also more flexible rules for funding, a full accelerator and full Pathfinder scheme, and also fast-track access for Horizon grant holders and certified national schemes. As said, there are many more projects which will be worth funding than the funding opportunities so far. And finally, also, we will create EIC Forum with member states' innovation agencies. You can certainly find out more, and my colleague Stéphane will now also go through it in more details. But I'd like to conclude, as you can see on the screen, that the EIC alone will not create global champions, but it will do is to create European Champions League. So that's our aim, that's our ambition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Signe. Before I ask our second presenter onto the screens, not onto the stage, I would like to pose a couple of questions to you. First, that I thought about those novelty features that you have explained. What actually makes the European Commission and the European Union to be more innovative? As we have been talking about the innovations by the entrepreneurs, by founders, by companies, but I see several innovative features, how the processes are designed by the European Commission. What is the driving force behind that?
Well, the main driving force is actually to be competitive and to create the competitive union. Now we know that in order to get out from the crisis, we really need the recovery of the economy. And certainly we can't do that without the companies. And we also need to use the full potential of the startup companies, of the SMEs, which are the backbone of our economy. That's why now the European Commission has become, actually, one could say, from a regulator to investor as well as innovator. Because otherwise, we can't be successful. We can't be globally successful. It's clearly the need to be globally successful.
Thank you, Signe, as that is exactly what I have experienced during those sessions that we have been engaged as the Pilot Advisory Board members, that European Innovation Council definitely is a very innovative institution. So, and now, we will take a small break together with Signe, also listening to Stéphane. And now I would like to give the stage to Mr. Stéphane Ouaki, live from Brussels. And he's the head of financial instruments units at DG Research and Innovation at the European Commission. And when Stéphane is done with his presentation, then we'll come back with Signe and try to answer all the possible questions that you have. But in order to have those questions, please use Slido. We have the applications that is available to post the questions, both from the on-site audience, but also from the online audience, and we will be happy to be back after Stéphane's presentation.
Thank you. Good morning to all. Thank you, Heidi, for your presentation, and Signe for introducing the subject of what the EIC has to offer. I am very pained, actually, not to be able to be with you on site in Tallinn, in this beautiful city and your beautiful country of Estonia. But since I figured that indeed Signe could maybe be on site, I'm very happy that she managed to come and present this with you, Heidi, today for this session on the EIC. I will now go more into the details into what we actually have to offer under the EIC, in particular on the calls that we have under the EIC Accelerator. You can go to the next slide, please. The EIC has been basically reshaped under this financial period, under Horizon 2020, the period 2014-2020, in order to meet better the needs of the innovator. We have tried to restructure our support for innovators by looking really at the innovator at the center of the programs that we put together. We have tried to simplify and make it much more agile, to follow the cycle of innovation and be really at the service of the innovator deploying those innovations. Next, please. Therefore, what we have done is basically try to radically simplify the framework that we've put in place around two programs, two instruments. One is the Pathfinder, which is aimed at developing breakthrough research leading to breakthrough innovation. And the other one is the Accelerator, that is aimed at supporting the beginning of the scale-up of companies that are deploying this breakthrough innovation. And for both of them, we are trying to make available a number of services, coaching, mentoring, business acceleration services, in order to allow those ideas and then those companies to have the type of support they need in order to grow faster and deal with a number of issues that are difficult when you are at the beginning of a new ideas and you're trying to develop it, or at the beginning of a new company and you're trying to develop it. And next, please. So first, I will briefly describe what the Pathfinder for Advanced Research has to offer, which is basically a number of instruments that we have reshaped under the Pathfinder, which are called Future Emerging Technologies, under FET Open, Proactive. And we have launched a number of dedicated calls aiming at developing, helping new ideas emerging on environmental intelligence, emerging paradigms and communities, and also to help those ideas to transition to innovation activities, which means that if the idea proves successful, how can we actually help this idea to transition to the stage when it can actually get to the point of a company and start the scale-up process of a company. Here we are providing grants for high-risk, high-reward science in early technological research stages. It is aimed mostly at researchers, innovative companies. Usually they are done under the basis of a consortium, which is the traditional way we give money under the research program. And of course, here we are helping the networking and of these ideas in order to get them up and running. We have put significant funding available under the Pathfinder, around 700 million euros for these last years of the program. And this is something that you need to look at if your idea is still relatively early in the development process, still has a number of hurdles to pass in order to prove its value in the lab, and you're not able yet to put it out and enter the market with, I would say, a relatively finished product or idea yet. Next, please. So the Pathfinder works with a possibility of up to 4 million in grants per project. Usually this is done on the basis, like I said, of a consortium. You need to have at least 3 legal entities from 3 EU countries or associated countries to participate. And also you can apply, like I said, for transition activities that can lead you later to apply for the EIC Accelerator funding. Next. So now I will spend a bit more time on the EIC Accelerator Pilot, which is, of course, one of the main new development that we have introduced of the pilot that will be fully scaled up under Horizon Europe in the next financial period. So what is the EIC Accelerator Pilot? It is basically an instrument for developing and scaling up high-risk innovation. We have tried to make the funding available bottom-up to all different themes with no defined thematic areas in order not to prejudge what type of innovation could emerge. Like I already said, it has access to a number of soft skill services like coaching, mentoring services, and also trying to push the companies that we have selected towards the world of investment, in particular towards corporates and commercial VCs. What do we provide? We provide a grant funding of up to 2.5 million euros, which is 70% of the cost that you incur. And you have also the option to go further and ask for an equity investment by the European Commission of up to 15 million euros. Next. So what are we looking for? And this is, I think, the important slide in order to know whether what we are offering is really for you at this particular stage of development of your ideas, of your company. We are looking for companies that hold the promise of a breakthrough innovation, or at least a market-creating or market-disturbing one. In other words, we are looking for usually high-risk, high-growth potential innovation that usually tend to be bankable with great difficulties by the current structures today on the market, either if we look at the banking sector or at the commercial VCs. We are looking, of course, at great management team, whether they had or not, I would say, previous experience in developing in entrepreneurship and developing such ideas, but a clear ambition to scale up, at least on the European scene. So, I mean, of course, if you are looking only at a very localized market, this is clearly not for you. Potentially to try to nurture a possible European or global player in the area in which you are trying to develop. We want, of course, to have a demonstrated knowledge of the target market. And of course, we will look very carefully at the plan for commercialization, at the business plan that sustains your idea in order to determine whether it is convincing. I think those elements are very important, all of them, in order to draft a proposal that then can convince us. The program is very competitive. We have, I would say, a success rate of around 4 to 6%, depending on the calls for proposals, at which time of the year they fall. And of course, we will be looking at really the best proposal, those that argue, I would say, the most eloquently what they are trying to do. Now, let's go next, please, on what will happen with the proposal. The submission of proposal is, of course, an IT tool. It's entirely done online. After we receive your proposals, we will ask a number of external experts drawn from all over the European Union to grade your proposal. That will be done in the so-called remote evaluation stage, and that will be this grading of the proposals will end up into a ranking of proposals. And we will then invite for an interview, face-to-face interview. These days, this take place online, of course, and remotely. But there used to be a time before the coronavirus came into our lives that we were doing that, of course, in Brussels in order to have the possibility of face-to-face interaction with the team of the company, the leading team of the company, in order to determine whether the proposal holds the promise of, I would say, breakthrough innovation, high-risk innovation that is being put to us, and therefore whether it deserves the support of European taxpayers' money on that. Then if you're successful in the interview process, the process will then go into the drafting of the grant agreement, which give you access to the grant money that you have requested. And in case you have opted for the blended finance option, there will be additional 2 steps. The first one will be, of course, the due diligence, when we will carry out, I would say, a more in-depth due diligence of the company to determine whether it is fit for purpose for investment by the European Commission. And then if that due diligence process is successful, we will then negotiate with you a draft equity agreement in order to allow the investment to take place. Next, please. So let me spend now a bit of time on the due diligence for blended finance process, which is actually the responsibility of my unit, which I know more directly, and which is a process that we are still actually setting up right now as we speak on the basis of the first companies that have been selected for funding. So the due diligence process will be carried out by the European Innovation Council Fund. The fund has been incorporated in Luxembourg in June, and the statutory organs of the fund are now established and functioning, and they are looking at the first opportunities of investments that have been selected under the process that of selection that I've just highlighted. Basically, what we do during this blended due diligence process is we look at what the company has proposed in terms of market assessment, what are the possible sources of financing, what are the potential here for value creation. And of course, we will concentrate on a number of important elements in order to safeguard the interest of the European Union, of course, which are the governance and the qualities of the company's management, the capital structure and financial planning, the business strategy, and a number of competitive areas. Of course, we do not here reevaluate the idea. We just concentrate on the financial side of the company. We may also propose a number of measures in order to reinforce the financial side of the company. But here the idea is really to determine what is the, I would say, structure of investment for the European Commission in agreement with the company. Next, please. Then an important element that needs to kick in here is that we will systematically try to crowd in private investment. What we mean by this is that we are in the process of building a community of trusted venture capitalists and investors in order to try to draw on the private sector strengths and try to bring alongside the European Commission funding, public funding, private funding. Why do we want to do that? Because we believe that the private sector remains I would say, the best solution to help your company grow, to help those ideas grow in Europe and become competitive. We see our role just as a bridge financing role in trying to bring it to the stage when the companies can actually access, I would say, normal commercial funding. And of course, as early as we can start this process by bringing in private investors, the better it is for the company. And this is what we will do systematically for those that have been selected and are in the process of graduating through the due diligence process, by trying to see whether there are opportunities for investment already taking place at that level. Of course, we will do that in full cooperation with the company. The company, at the end of the day, will have to decide whether it wants the participation of these investors or not. Next, please. And then finally, on the equity agreement. So the equity investment will be structured through a separate agreement that will that we sit alongside the grant agreement that will be signed to organize the access to the grant money. The European Commission here, of course, will be advised by experts, but will remain in charge of the investment decision. And here it's an important point. The EIC is offering you a kind of a non-dilutive or equity participation. We are not there to take over the control of the company. We are here to accompany the development of the company, and therefore we will not take, I would say, a directive role in the daily management of the company. We will also, of course, develop, depending on the specific of every company, an appropriate exit strategy, depending on the situation of the company, when, in particular, enough growth and maturity is reached by the firm in order to make it attractive to investors. We are not going to overstay are welcome. In other words, at the moment when our presence in the company is not required anymore, of course, we will then leave the company and let it grow and let it deal with the private sector on its own. Now, let me turn to a number of statistics that are next slide, please, that are quite important. The results of the last calls we evaluated, the deadline was in May 2020, and we allocated 380 million euros. That call was particularly centered on what we call the Green Deal areas in order to make Europe more, I would say, climate neutral at the horizon of 2050. And as you can see, we allocated quite a large amount of money, 380 million euros. Most of the proposals that we allocated here, we allocated in the area, in terms of money, in the area of blended finance. And at the end, as you can see, in terms of amount, 59% of the money will be allocated to equity and 41% of the money allocated to grants. Now, if we look, next slide, please, to how this has been divided between countries, you can see that, of course, there has been very successful countries in that call. France with 11 proposals selected, Norway with 7 proposals selected, Germany 5, Denmark 4, Switzerland 4. But if you go more down, you will see that Estonia managed to get also 1 proposal selected, Ukraine as well 1. I think these results show to a certain extent that the program is also becoming more relevant towards countries towards the eastern side of the European Union, what we call the widening countries in our jargon, where we believe there is a great opportunity here with new startup, a lot of dynamism, which explains also our presence today here at this event, because we would like to offer, of course, to your startups, to your ideas, the possibility to grow faster, even if maybe the possibility to use, I would say, private money to grow is not necessarily as developed in more mature markets that are present in the western part of the continent. And then next, please, if you look at last slide of statistics on the last call, the budget allocated per country, you see, of course, a very similar progression with France with close to 70 million euros allocated, and all the way down when, again, if you look at Estonia, you see a proposal that got 2.3 million euros of support there. Now, I will conclude with a number of elements, consideration. Next slide, please, on the European Innovation Council Equity Fund, the so-called EIC Fund. As I said, it became an official entity on the 22nd of June. This is the first time the European Commission will make such direct equity investment in companies with ownership stakes expected to be in general around 10%, sometimes going up to 15 or up to 25%, depending on the companies and the opportunities that are being given to us. Heidi, which is right now moderating on site this presentation for you today, is, I would say, a very distinguished member of the investment committee that will be systematically reviewing what the EIC fund is preparing to take in terms of equity stakes into those companies. Next, please. And we will, of course, we are doing this not alone. We have the European Investment Bank that is our advisor and doing basically the groundwork of contacting the companies and conducting the due diligence and then drafting the equity agreement. But of course, the EIC fund, like I said, is fulfilling a funding gap at the startup stage. And at a place where the market is underperforming in Europe in particular, and we are trying basically to be a financing bridge to that to those companies. Then I would say a couple of last words. Last, please, on next slide, please. On the other opportunities that the EIC offers, which I did not mention until now, we are also offering a number of prizes. These prizes, they may interest you. Some of them are still in the running. For example, here are innovative batteries for vehicles or fuel from the sun. There are significant amounts if you have very good ideas in those areas that you want to look into those opportunities. And then, of course, next slide, please, for further info. You can have access, of course, on the EIC website, where the portal on the European funding is also quite developed with a number of other information. I will stop there. Next slide, final slide. Thank you very much for your attention. And of course, I stand ready to answer questions if there is any. Thank you very much.
So many thanks to Stéphane, and we hope that we can keep you also online so that
Yes.
hopefully we have several questions so that Signe, myself and Stéphane can hopefully answer all those. And please use Slido app to ask the questions, but if you want to ask those questions on site here, then Kristi and Callum can help you as well. So just raise a hand, pose your question, he or she will repeat your question, otherwise we cannot probably hear it, and also Stéphane cannot hear it, because due to the healthy restrictions, we can't pass the microphone. So let's start. Oh, good to see that we really have some questions in Slido. Very good. And the code or the number for Slido is also available, so you can check it and you can ask the questions. I would like to start with one question from myself. When I looked at the numbers also, how many companies have submitted the applications, how many have been funded, and also the numbers that you have shown on your slide, how much money Estonian startups have achieved, basically. So that, are there any specific measures in order to help those regions or countries that are not yet so well represented to reach the higher numbers in positive applications?
Actually, as I mentioned during my presentation, I also provide advisory services. And clearly, the companies who do not have that much experience yet certainly will need those more than the others. What we've also been doing is really to creating the network so that companies can learn from each other and also bringing the different support structures that member states have together. So that also then, say, Enterprise Estonia here or whatever other structures are in other member states will be also able to support their companies directly in order to be more successful in the rounds.
Okay, very good. That drives me to the next question, that do you see that as we have mostly the participants from Baltic area and new Nordic area and definitely from other parts of Europe and the world, but do you see that there are certain issues that the Baltic and Nordic companies can contribute in that innovation system of the EU?
Well, we know that really the IT sector is well advanced in this area, and when we look at also what the countries have identified as the areas of development and research and innovation, clearly IT sector, life sciences, energy, climate change related areas are certainly something where particularly the companies from this region can contribute. Now, getting back to your first question, what I also highlighted, and this is really a novelty, is the program managers. Mm-hmm. The program managers with whom we started now already during the pilot, but certainly these will become much more important in the next stage. And I know that also we've learned also from the US there, because they've been using this kind of support for several years. So this is also something which certainly the companies can benefit.
Okay, very good. Now let's take some of the questions from Slido. And okay, Stéphane, do you hear us? I think that that is
yes.
That is the question for you. That's a question that why does the EIC fund want to invest directly into the companies and not being the fund of fund to invest through the dedicated private investment funds? What do you say about that? Why direct investments?
This is what we. Yes, so thank you for that question. Actually, that allows me to clarify also another aspect of our activities. We do invest through alongside other funds, and we do that through the European Investment Fund. Mm-hmm. This is something that we have done now for years that has been also quite successful. But what we have observed, though, is that the appetite for risk on the part of the commercial VC that we invest alongside is rather limited when it comes to high-risk innovation. And this is why we believe that we need to do something different. And we have set up DIC to invest this time directly at this particular stage of the development of this high-risk innovation, high-potential innovation, where Europe, as a particular problem, is nurturing, I would say, potential future global players.
Okay, thank you. Very good. That drives me to the next question. As you mentioned that there will be a community, a trustworthy VC investors developed in order to co-invest together with them and not to crowd out the private investors. So are there any steps taken already in that field, or what's the current status there?
Yeah, so basically what we got is a number of expression of interest for a number of investors, sometimes big, sometimes small, sometimes rather institutional, sometimes rather, I would say, more of a small private type of initiatives that have approached us in different ways, and of which we have established contacts with. Some of these contacts have gone as far as discussing on the part of the companies that we were already selected opportunities for investment. In some of the contacts, we remain relatively as a general introduction level. We are in the process of systematizing this process, in particular in the process of investment done at the level of the fund, in order to systematically check with these investors that have expressed an interest in joining us, whether they are interested in the companies that have been selected for support by DIC. So it's work in progress at this stage, but we are quite happy with the level of interest that we have generated on the part of private investors or institutional investors.
Thank you. Very, very good. I would like to pose the next question to Signe, because you mentioned those fields of activities or field of research and innovation that the Nordic countries, or particularly IT-heavy countries, can contribute the most. I see that there is a question from India. And the question is that, does European Innovation Council also supports biotechnology and life sciences innovation? So it seems to me that it's one of the target, or these are the target areas.
Well, clearly, as it was described, there are two parts of the Innovation Council. In the Accelerator, there are no areas identified. So you actually, companies from whatever area can find a support. But what we've seen now is actually that the areas are much more merging. So if you are a life sciences company, you will also take advantage of the IT digital solutions, for instance, so that the borders become much more, so to say, blurred, and actually that the companies are using, well, different technologies, different areas in their really innovative breakthrough solutions. But clearly this area was much more the target now during the crisis, because there were also extraordinary calls launched to find solutions to fight against the virus. And in the other part of the Pathfinder part, there are already predefined areas, but certainly this is something which will also develop further during the next program. But clearly, these are one of the areas which have been supporting and will be supported.
Absolutely, very good. But if we come to the question, if we come to the person who asked the question, so there are probably several people watching us online outside of Europe, so that if the companies from India, for example, so whether all the innovators globally are welcome to Europe?
Now, our program as such is open to the world. But clearly, the part which is the research part of the consortia, and we have then the different measures of cooperation, joint calls, where actually also the Indian companies have participated. And I know that the medical area, life sciences area, is one area where actually we've collaborated with the Indian companies. And certainly now, finding solutions for the corona crisis, we also worked together with several countries all over the world. Now, what is now, as I said, and as we've seen also in the countries who have been successful, that EIC is open to EU member states and also associated countries. Mm-hmm. So clearly, this is a new opportunity that what we foresee is that more countries all over the world, if they share the same values and also the same level of research and innovation, actually can become associated to our program, mm-hmm. which in a way will make it much easier then also for the companies to participate in the program. So that then the countries pay directly to our program to become associated, and then the companies can benefit from the program.
Thank you. As a member of the Pilot Advisory Board of EIC, I have experience, as we have a very international advisory board team even, so that there are the entrepreneurs who have relocated from the other parts of the world to Europe and that are very, very happy with the European innovation funding system, that we want to be open actually to all innovative entrepreneurs from all over the world, as very often the USA that has been seen as the mecca for startup founders because it is so open to ask all innovative people to come over and to have that funding from the VCs that has a very strong VC system. Basically, we want to tackle the same challenge with the European Innovation Council and its fund so that it will be very, very open to every innovative founder, entrepreneur. So
perhaps if I may say, also add that, for instance, we have already under the current program specific cooperation projects. And one of those, by the way, is also between the European and Indian startup companies.
Okay.
This was something that I launched myself 2 years ago in Bangalore, in India. And this has been running since then. And now what is also the new program, similar one that we've opened with Africa, mm-hmm. because we know that also there is a huge potential also on the African continent. And clearly also collaboration between the startup companies will pay off.
Okay, that's really, really good to know and to keep in mind. I'm really happy that we have several questions in Slido. So Stefan, there are definitely those questions that you can answer the best. So I will shoot a couple of those to you. First one is, for example, when will be the next window for the application submissions, or when will be the next cutoff date?
In mid-October. I enjoy you to look on the website. So the mid-October deadline will be of course evaluated in November for an answer that will come at the beginning of December.
Okay, very good. That was a short one. The next short question is that, do you support solo founder startups with funding and help them find partners for their ideas? If you allow me, then I will reflect very, very briefly by myself on that. There is no difference whether there is a solo founder startup or non-solo founder startup, because the initiative and the innovation funding addresses disruptive innovation. If there is a solo founder that can bring it on, just shoot. Don't keep it under the cover. But it is very, very difficult to make big things happen if you are a solo person in your startup. So definitely it's better to engage other enthusiastic people into your company and then to try to change the world. So, Stefan, the next question is for you. What are the criteria of the selection, whether to invest or not and how the process works. You have described pretty much the process on the screen, so whether you would like to add something else, not going into too much into details.
Well, I think what the experts are looking for when they basically compare the offers from the different companies is whether they are convinced by actual technology that is being provided to be scaled up by the company, and second, whether this is sustained by a business and financial plan that has been thought through and makes sense, and then shows clearly a need for the European taxpayers to come in and support. So I think all these aspects are very important in the convincing of the experts that are reviewing these opportunities for investment in the evaluation stage, in order for them to determine whether actually this makes sense from the point of view of what is the technology that we are supposed to support. So again, here, I mean, to make it very clear, if you are trying to develop fossil fuels, for example, clearly that will not be in the area of what we're trying to do. I'm taking an extreme example. But if you are also have, I would say, a half-baked business plan, it will certainly not fly. And finally, if you cannot convince that there is really a case for European taxpayers' money to be put in that initiative, I think it will be also very difficult for you to get selected with your idea. And I think these elements are very important and are quite decisive at the level of the interview, in particular, when you will be submitted for a lot of questions, probing these different elements at the interview stage.
Thank you. And we have time basically for 2 last questions or even 1 last question. So if we have any questions from the on-site audience, I would like to take it. If you find more information about the EU-Africa collaboration. Very good. So, I like really one question on Slido here, and the question is that do you see that software and AI solutions as innovative, or is the fund mostly focusing on deep tech or hard science? The question is rather that whether software and AI solutions are enough deep tech. So questions from Vicky, yes. Stefan, do you want to reflect on that, or?
No, yeah, I mean, by definition, in the world today, most of the, I would say, more hard science, deep tech changes or technologies that are being introduced have a very strong software IT component. So it is very difficult, I would say, to make a very clear cut between the two and say, okay, on that side, this is purely deep tech, on the other, it is purely software IT. Clearly, if it is only an app, an application that is being developed with no real, I would say, breakthrough technology behind it, it will not necessarily be, I would say, the type of proposals that we will be looking for. But as such, they are not disqualified from applying, and they clearly could be at the end of the day selected, depending on the actual real-world changes or real market creation that is actually provided. So it all depends on what we're talking about here. But clearly, there is no exclusion on digital and IT proposals. But often, indeed, we tend to support, I would say, more deep tech or more integration into high technology proposal with elements, very strong elements of software or digital.
So, thank you. If I may wrap it up, then in my understanding, the software and AI solutions are very deep tech, depending on the problem that they are solving. So definitely that is a good opportunity for all the IT-related companies in that region. And if there was a specific question how to find more information about the EU and African collaboration project, then definitely we can share the links to the websites later on together with the presentations and the follow-up information on the session. What I want to assure as the last statement of the current session is that my background is mostly with the private companies, and my personal experience with the European Innovation Councils and all those wonderful people I have met, Stéphane's people, the unit that he is heading, and the all DG research and innovation people, actually, these are very innovative people. And usually there's like the general attitude that EU is very bureaucratic. It is going to change. It has changed a lot, and it is going to change on a daily basis. And with the EIC funding, at least what concerns the equity investments, we have agreed that we have to design the process in a way that it wouldn't take more than a normal venture capital money fundraising, so that it would be like 3 to 6 months in order to get the funding from the EU. So, thank you very much. Thank you, Stéphane, for joining us live from Brussels.
Thank you.
Our time is over, and we have to finish it now. Thank you, Signe, for joining us. Thank you, the wonderful audience with all those questions, and the people that watched us online. Thank you.
So, thanks.